It was a crisp morning in Barcelona, the kind of morning that promised a beautiful day ahead. The sun had just risen, casting long shadows over the cobblestone streets as the hustle and bustle of city life began to awaken. Tourists flooded the famous Las Ramblas, while locals walked quickly to their destinations. The cafes were opening, their aromas of freshly brewed coffee wafting into the air, and the occasional sound of a street musician's guitar filled the streets. It was the typical scene of a vibrant European city, alive and energetic. Among the throngs of people, Lionel Messi, the world-renowned soccer player, was incognito. He had come to visit his family, taking a break from his usual schedule of training and matches. Messi had always been a humble figure, preferring to stay out of the public eye when possible, and he was easily mistaken for an ordinary person due to his unassuming presence. Today, he had decided to walk through the city, enjoying a rare moment of freedom without cameras and crowds following him. As Messi walked down the street, his mind wandered to his recent accomplishments. His career had been filled with triumphs, records broken, and victories celebrated by millions. But today, all of that seemed distant. He was simply a man on the street, taking in the beauty of Barcelona. He paused in front of a small flower shop, admiring the vibrant colors of the blossoms. He took a deep breath, savoring the tranquility of the moment, before continuing his walk down the narrow streets. Without warning, a loud screeching sound shattered the calm. The tires of a car skidded as it veered dangerously toward the sidewalk. It was as if time slowed down in that moment. Messi's instincts, honed through years of playing on the pitch, kicked in. He heard a scream, a voice full of panic, and saw something that froze his blood. A frail, elderly woman was standing at the corner of the street, unaware of the oncoming car. She was clutching a grocery bag in her hands, her glasses slightly askew, and her pace slow and cautious. Her silver hair shimmered in the sunlight as she looked up at the passing pedestrians, unaware of the impending danger. The car, a silver sedan, was speeding toward her. The driver seemed to be out of control, and there was no sign that the vehicle would be able to stop in time. It was clear to Messi that the woman was in grave danger. His heart raced as he saw the car's trajectory, its brakes failing to slow its speed. He didn't think twice. He acted instinctively, like a warrior ready to protect those in need. Without a moment of hesitation, Messi sprinted toward the elderly woman. He darted through the crowd, his speed unmatched even in the chaos of the street. With every step, the distance between him and the woman narrowed. But the car was getting closer, its tires screeching louder. "Watch out," Messi yelled, his voice filled with urgency. But it was too late for the woman to move on her own. She was frozen in place, too slow to react, caught in the web of confusion. Messi was closing in fast. He had only seconds to act. He was now only a few feet from the woman, and he could see the terror in her eyes as the car hurtled toward her. Without even thinking, he reached out, grabbing the woman around the waist and pulling her with all his strength. It was a move that would have seemed impossible for someone who didn't know Messi's athleticism and ability to accelerate in tight spaces. In one fluid motion, Messi yanked her out of harm's way. He dove to the side, his body twisting in the air as he shielded her from the impending disaster. They both rolled across the pavement, Messi's arms wrapped protectively around her as they hit the ground hard. His knees slammed into the cobblestones, and his shoulder took most of the impact. The wind was knocked out of him, but he didn't care. His thoughts were only on the woman who was now safely in his arms. The car sped past them, its tires screeching as it went by. For a moment, everything was still. The world seemed to hold its breath. The elderly woman, who had been on the brink of disaster, was now safe. Her life spared by the swift and heroic actions of a stranger. Breathing heavily, Messi gently helped the woman to her feet. His chest was heaving, his heart still pounding from the adrenaline rush, but his gaze never wavered from her face. The woman looked at him, wide-eyed and in shock, as if she couldn't quite process what had just happened. "Are you okay?" Messi asked, his voice soft but full of concern. The woman blinked, taking a moment to regain her composure. Her frail hands shook as she adjusted her glasses. I'm fine," she stammered, her voice trembling. I don't know what happened. I didn't even see the car coming." Thank you. Thank you so much. Messi smiled softly, helping her steady herself. It's nothing. Just glad I was here to help. It was in that moment that the chaos of the street came rushing back. People were gathering around them, murmuring in disbelief. Some were still frozen in place, trying to make sense of the events that had just unfolded before them. Others pulled out their phones, snapping pictures of the hero who had just saved the woman's life. Messi, however, paid them no attention. He simply focused on the woman, ensuring she was all right. I'm sorry, the woman continued, her voice filled with gratitude. I'm not sure how to thank you. You saved my life. It was nothing, Messi repeated, his eyes scanning the crowd around them. The attention was beginning to grow, and he knew it wouldn't be long before people realized who he was. But he didn't care about that. Right now, his only focus was on the woman and her well-being. Do you need me to call someone? Messi asked, his tone still gentle. The woman shook her head. No, I'll be fine. My daughter will be here soon. She lives just a few blocks away. Thank you again. Messi nodded, offering one last reassuring smile before helping the woman stand up straighter. He looked toward the silver sedan that had nearly caused the accident. The driver had stopped several meters ahead and was now standing outside, seemingly panicked. With the elderly woman now steady on her feet, Messi gave her one last look, nodded in silent understanding, and then, without another word, disappeared into the crowd. As he walked away, his heart was still racing. He had always been the one to dodge tackles on the soccer field, to maneuver through defenders with grace and agility. But saving a life, saving this woman's life, had been something entirely different. It had been more than just a moment of heroism. It had been a reminder that, even amidst all the fame, there were moments that truly mattered. Messi didn't need the applause, the recognition, or the camera flashes. What mattered was that he had made a difference. And that was the greatest victory of all. Lionel Messi walked through the streets of Barcelona with a sense of calm. The events of the morning were still fresh in his mind. How everything had happened in a blur, how he had acted without thinking, and how, in the end, he had helped someone in need. It was a feeling he didn't often experience, despite the countless matches and accolades in his career. It wasn't about winning or scoring goals. It was about doing something good for someone else, something that couldn't be measured by goals or trophies. As he passed the corners of narrow alleyways and quiet cafes, Messi allowed himself to take a deep breath and process what had happened. The adrenaline had started to fade, replaced by a quiet satisfaction, and for the first time in years, he felt a bit of peace. He had been a hero, but this time, it wasn't in front of thousands of roaring fans. It was in a moment of pure humanity, on a busy street corner, where his instincts had taken over. But as Messi walked on, he could feel the weight of the crowd's growing attention. People had seen the incident, and while most were still murmuring in shock, there were a few who began to realize who he was. Hey, isn't that Messi? A voice whispered from behind. He ignored it, continuing his stroll, his hands tucked in his jacket pockets. He had hoped for some time away from the spotlight, but it seemed his presence was no longer going unnoticed. The whispers grew louder as more and more people turned their heads to see the soccer legend casually walking among them. Messi, right? One voice, then two. Before long, people started to follow him, pulling out their phones, snapping pictures, and calling his name. Messi tried to remain unbothered, but he could feel the familiar pressure building. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate his fans. It was just that, for once, he had hoped to blend into the crowd and feel like a regular person, not the face of an entire sport. He slowed his pace and looked around for a way to slip into the quieter parts of the city. That's when he noticed something. A small group had gathered near the flower shop where he had paused earlier. Among the crowd was the elderly woman he had saved, and she was waving her arms enthusiastically in his direction. Messi hesitated, unsure if he should approach, but the woman's face lit up with such warmth and gratitude that he couldn't ignore it. As he made his way toward her, she spotted him and rushed over, nearly tripping over her own feet in excitement. "There you are," she exclaimed, her voice full of joy. "I was hoping I would see you again. Thank you. Thank you so much for saving me." Her face was flushed, not just from the physical exertion of running, but from the sheer emotion of what had happened. Messi smiled softly, acknowledging her gratitude. "I'm glad you're okay," he replied, his voice warm and sincere. I can't believe it. Here I am, just walking along, and I almost became another statistic. But you were like a superhero." She laughed nervously, her eyes shining with both relief and admiration. Messi chuckled, trying to deflect the praise. "I'm no superhero. Just did what anyone would have done." But the woman wasn't listening. "No, no, no," she insisted. "I've lived a long life, and I've never been in such a situation. I'm lucky I crossed paths with you today, Mr. Messi. It's like something out of a storybook." Before Messi could respond, the woman's daughter arrived, rushing over to her mother with a worried expression. She was mid-conversation with a friend, her voice fading as she turned the corner and saw her mother standing there, perfectly fine, thanks to Messi. "Mom, are you okay?" the daughter asked, looking over her shoulder, clearly concerned about the scene unfolding around her. "Oh, I'm more than okay," the elderly woman said, grinning from ear to ear. "This young man here saved my life." The daughter froze, then looked at Messi. Recognition flooded her face as she stepped back, eyes wide. "Wait, you're Lionel Messi?" she asked in disbelief, her tone suddenly turning respectful and starstruck. Messi nodded politely, trying to downplay the situation. "Yes, but don't make a fuss. I was just in the right place at the right time." The daughter, still stunned, quickly pulled out her phone and began snapping pictures. "I can't believe this. My mom is a huge fan of yours. We watch every match. She's always talking about you. And now, well, this is more than she ever could have imagined." The elderly woman chuckled, shaking her head. "Well, I didn't think I'd be meeting him like this. I was expecting to just go home with my groceries, but this has certainly been an eventful day." Messi laughed softly, the awkwardness of the moment dissolving. He understood that people were excited to meet him, but his mind kept drifting back to the real reason he was there: the woman's safety. The brief heroism, the life saved. It was what mattered most. As the crowd around them grew, Messi felt the weight of their stares. The moment, however, was interrupted when a young man wearing a cap and sunglasses stepped into the crowd. He had a calm, collected demeanor, but his eyes scanned the area as if he were looking for someone specific. When he saw Messi, he walked directly over, his face breaking into a small grin. "Messi," the man said, his voice calm but purposeful. "We need to get you out of here." Messi looked at him, slightly confused, but the man continued with a nod toward the growing crowd. "It's getting too chaotic. You're going to have more people swarming you in a second if we don't move." Realizing the situation, Messi turned back to the elderly woman and her daughter, who were still chatting animatedly. He felt a twinge of regret that he couldn't stay longer, but he knew it was for the best. He waved goodbye with a gentle smile. "I'm glad you're okay," Messi said again, this time with a softer tone. "Take care of yourself." The woman smiled brightly. "You take care too, Lionel. And I'll be telling this story for years to come." With that, Messi slipped through the crowd, following the young man who had appeared out of nowhere. They made their way down a side street, cutting through alleys until they reached a quieter area. The city, so lively just moments before, now felt distant and peaceful. Messi's heart had slowed, but he knew that the moments he had just lived through would stay with him. It wasn't the applause of thousands or the glory of the field that mattered. It was the simple act of saving a life, of being there when someone needed help, of making a difference without the world watching. He had been in the right place at the right time.